You're listening to Bad Dog Agility, bringing you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility.
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 290. Today's podcast is brought to you by hititboard.com and the Teeter Teach It, an easy-to-use tool that controls the amount of tip on your teeter so you can introduce motion to your dog in a gradual way. Go to hititboard.com for the new Teeter Teach It and other training tools and toys. Use discount code BDA10 to get 10% off your order. That's hititboard.com. Today, we're going to be talking about the relationship between speed and accuracy in dog agility. And we've touched on this, I'm sure, in many podcasts, different aspects of speed or accuracy or the combination of the two. But I wanted to just have an entire podcast just about speed versus accuracy, how they're related, which one's better, which one do you want? And this came from an email. When you join our mailing list, we ask, what's the one thing holding you back? What could we help you with at Bad Dog Agility? And somebody emailed and they said they wanted to increase our speed without sacrificing the accuracy. And I think that's a goal that a lot of people have. And I think that it is possible with some caveats. And that's what we want to talk about today. I think that people need to have some expectation setting when it comes to changing their speed versus accuracy mix.
Yeah, I 100% agree that setting expectations for making that transition is super important. A lot of people will say, okay, I want to increase my speed. And I tend to find that with my students live, it happens a lot after they've kind of gotten their feet wet with that particular dog or in the sport in general. They've done novice, open, they're in excellent, maybe masters, and they're feeling pretty good with the courses and the handling. And they say, okay, I'm ready to take it up a notch. I'm ready to try to work on my speed. But they are not prepared for what's going to happen along the way. And that is often you will see a decrease in the accuracy. And that can sometimes be hard to cope with. Say you have a 50, 60, 70% success rate on the weekend, and you now start to do things to work for more speed. That Q rate is going to drop. And there might be that part of you that goes, oh no, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I wanted to do. Let me go back to the accuracy part, but you're going to have that drop down. Not every team, but you need to be prepared for that drop down, potential drop down in your training. And that might affect things like timing when you want to play with this change, right? Maybe deciding 4 weeks before a national event is not the time to start to try to push for some of this speed in case that accuracy drops and now your confidence is lost. So I think a lot of it is about setting the expectations, knowing that there is potentially going to be a change in, your accuracy and your Q rate.
Right, exactly. And let's take a step back and kind of explain, well, why are you likely to lose some accuracy? Why does it go hand in hand that when you increase the speed, you're going to decrease your accuracy? Well, when you think about it, as you increase speed, there are a couple of different things that are going to happen. First of all, you have less time to give information everywhere on course. You may literally have fewer number of strides for the dog to react. So less time gives you more opportunity for error just in your timing. You may not be giving the information to the dog when they need it as that speed increases. And then I think there's just a more general notion of your overall timing, and you may not have a very good sense of, with this new level of speed, when I can make a front cross, when I am going to have to do a rear cross. So you may have to make some handling changes that you just don't have the experience to be able to look at and know that you're going to be able to put in a front cross here. You're going to be able to put in a blind cross here. And you're going to, you don't have that that rapport with the dog where everything just feels nice and easy. It's going to feel rushed. It's not going to feel natural.
Yeah, I had a tiny border collie. She was a little under 18 inches. And so way back in the day for international competition, these ISC classes, she jumps 26 inches. And then towards the end of her career, she runs 16 inches.
Which is her natural height.
Which is a natural height. So you're dropping 10 inches. And I found that even though she was older and a little bit slower, she was actually much, much faster. So even though she was slower, she was paradoxically faster. That makes sense because, of course, she's jumping 10 inches less. So the handling has to change a little bit. You're going to do rear crosses in a couple of spots where you might do front crosses. So I think that's what we think of traditionally. But I want to even step back and say that it is not that easy to suddenly be so much faster. Like when I think of someone who comes to me and says, well, I want to get faster, it's not as easy as just snapping our fingers. And then the very next week they come back to training and, I tell them to do X, Y, and Z, and the dog's going to run, say, 20% faster, right? So usually these are things that have been built into the dog over a long period of time, right? And I think you can also even split it into obstacle performance and handling, right? So I think one of the best ways, and I'll see if Jen agrees with me here, to get your dog faster is to fix some of the issues you're having on contacts, weave pulls, maybe even wide turns out of tunnels. I guess that's more handling. But I want to hear what Jen thinks about contacts and weaves as a way to, quote unquote, make your dog faster.
I was just thinking about contacts and weaves, actually, as Sarah was mentioning some of the things that will change. And she talked about the timing and having less timing and treading, a lot of that pertaining to handling. And I thought, well, the other reason that you will often sacrifice accuracy is one of the ways that you may increase speed is through obstacle performance. So, for example, maybe you are attempting to speed up the weave pulls. For some dogs, that's maybe like a change in their footwork. And even just the retraining of that, when all of a sudden you go to take it to a trial or you try to increase that speed, even in training, you may have mistakes, right? A dog who's doing like a 2-step and then trying to switch to like a hop, they get a little carried away and they get a little ahead of themselves and they might pop out at pole 10 or pop out along the way, which is another sacrifice of accuracy, but not pertaining to handling. Same thing, a lot of people, I find one of the biggest go-tos in my experience for people wanting to increase the speed is contact training. Right. So either trying to retrain or improve their contact speed, or what we've talked a lot about in the past is that switch to running contacts. So they'll take a stopped A-frame and they'll switch to a running A-frame, or a stop dog walk and switch to a running. And that is certainly going to be a way to increase speed, but you also have to remember you're retraining. So there is the potential that taking it to a trial situation, taking it to a new situation is going to sacrifice the accuracy. But answering your question specifically, absolutely. Obstacle performance is a great way to look at increasing speed. And in some cases can be easier than other options of trying to improve the handling or change the handling.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, especially when you look at dog walks. If your dog's running a 3.5, 4, even 5-second dog walk, and you have an idea that you can get it down to 2.5 seconds, depending on your natural speed, you're saving a lot of time, 2 seconds per run. Now multiply that over, say, 50 runs over a year. That's 100. So that's like 100 extra points if you're working toward your MOC in the American Kennel Club to help you to qualify for a big event. So, just fixing your dog walk could be a really big deal. Go ahead. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I was also thinking that, beyond obstacle performance, I think another way that a lot of handlers have room to increase their dog's speed is that when you have been focusing on being right, you may allow your dog to make some pretty wide turns in spots because it is safe and because it gets you the cue. And so it's not a matter of I think it's that attitude of a cue is a good run. And I think the three of us would say not every cue is a good run, right? Sometimes it can be a pretty bad, poor run with some, significantly wide turns and a very confused dog that ends up being a cue. But the reason why some of those handlers allow those wide turns is because it lets them get into a position and they, maybe they're going for a front cross that they really can't make, but they kind of force it in, force the dog wide, manage to hold it all together. They get the cue, but they create this wide turn. And the alternative would be doing some other handling that is not as fail-safe, but is much clearer to the dog creates a tighter turn, but maybe, some percentage of the time you mess up that handling because you go for a maneuver that you're not as comfortable with. And so that, that's a place where you lose accuracy, but you were actually handling better. And that's where I think you can over time, bring that accuracy back by building up the skills of other handling maneuvers. So if you've been forcing in front crosses in bad places, taking wide turns, but not getting the off course, then when you replace some of those front crosses with rear crosses, then yes, you may mess up some of them. You're not as comfortable with the rear cross. Maybe you push your dog off, but as you build that rear cross skill, then when it all comes together, you're getting tighter turns, your dog knows where they're going, and you end up with those faster times.
It often to me is thinking about it in terms of kind of risk reward analysis,
yes.
Right? So you're saying, okay, well, this is safer, but it's going to cost you a little bit of time, or you can go with what is maybe more outside your comfort zone or higher risk. But if you can pull it off, and that might not happen on the first, second, or third try, but when you do get it nailed down, it is in fact going to be the faster option in the end. And I think for a lot of people, it is really asking yourself, how much of a risk are you willing to take? Are you a gambler? Are you not? And I think that kind of goes back to the setting the goals and the expectations of, what might happen when you go to work for more speed. I think a lot of people say they want more speed. Oh, I want to work on more speed. But when it comes down to it, are you really willing to give it up? It might mean an 0 for 4 weekend. And in one 0 for 4 weekend, they're going, no, I want to go back to my accuracy. I want my cue. I want my points, or, whatever. So being realistic and setting those expectations, but knowing that there is some risk that comes with it. And like you just said, it might not happen right away, but keep working on it and it will pay off in the end.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That context is key. Context is everything. It really depends on where you're coming from and where your dog is coming from. And just understanding that in standard, in my opinion, as we just talked about, fixing your contacts, that's going to really save you a lot of time, especially if they're struggling on the teeter, A-frame, the table, these are all spots that the time really adds up, and you can add in quite a bit of time there. What about if you already have a very fast dog? So if you have a very fast dog, I think one thing that you run into, I think in all levels of agility, is that rear crosses are not a winning strategy. That's what people think. I think it's false. To me, it's obviously false. And one of the first things I'll do when I'm working with a handler who says, look, I have a really fast dog. I have these wide turns. I'm losing to dogs that I know are slower than my dog, right? Well, obviously, because your dog keeps turning wide and you keep trying to force these front crosses, occasionally blind crosses, in where a simple rear cross would give you a very nice tight turn, an excellent line, and you would win easily. We make these changes and the dog ends up going faster. But from their perspective, because for years they had been hit over the head with front cross is the fastest winning strategy, right? And it's so not intuitive to them to do these rear crosses. So I think if you're kind of in that group and you're getting these wide turns, you want to think about that. Maybe I can add some rear crosses. And I think that's number one. And then on the flip side, right? If you can run much faster than your dog, right? Your dog is a dog that maybe is coming just under course time. And then like every once in a while, they don't make course time, right? When they're tired, they're hot, or it's the third run of the day. And you're like, okay, I want to get them faster, but I want to get them faster so that we can consistently come under course time, right? I think this is a really good goal. And then it turns out that, they send me some videos, and then they're doing a lot of things like rear crossing when they don't necessarily need to. Like clearly they can outrun the dog in this specific sequence. Or for me, this is a very big offender. They're pushing into the dog's line. Like the dog thinks they need to go straight. Suddenly the handler's pushing on them to make a 90-degree turn. And the dog thinks, what have I done wrong?
Like running on the outside of a curve.
Yeah. I'm very sure we're going straight. And now suddenly you're pushing into me and telling me it's wrong. Not only do you get the wide turn, right? But you get the sense from the dog that they have made a mistake. And some dogs feel like when they made a mistake, they're going to slow down. Why? Because they don't want to be wrong. And so maybe the next time, if they slow down a little bit, mom will be able to get ahead of them. And instead of pushing into them, guide them a little better toward that next obstacle. So you are, in fact, training your dog to be slower. So for these people, it might be a great idea to try and speed up a little bit as the handler to get to some fronts and blinds that maybe they wouldn't ordinarily do. But even doing something as basic as rear crossing at the proper place, before a certain jump instead of after a certain jump, just changing where you rear cross can have a really big impact on the dog's speed, not just for that run, where maybe you gain 5/100ths or maybe 1/10, but in terms of the dog's attitude. So now when you look over a 6-month period or a several year period, the dog begins to speed up because they have confidence in your direction.
Yeah, that's the word that I was just about to bring up is confidence. Like confidence is king. And when you kill the dog's confidence, you kill the dog's speed. And so I think you've brought up two very, very good points that I want to make separately because I think they can be related, but I think also there's people that are an offender on one side versus the other. So on the one side, I think the running the outside of the curves, as you were saying, is, can be damaging to a dog's speed because of that sense of being wrong, cutting off the dog and hurting their confidence. But I think the other thing that people will do that is related to something else that you said is, maybe they do front crosses, but they don't always, they're not always in the right place or their timing isn't right. And so when their timing isn't right, that's when I think that when any timing is wrong, that's when I think you see dogs literally slow down to give you, the handler, more time to be more clear. As another way of saying what you said, right? The dog's like, when I'm going fast, I'm not very sure where you want me to go, but when I slow up, you are able to get to your spot handler. They're like giving you time to make your front cross so that they can be right more often than not. And so I think that is the danger of over focusing on accuracy. If you, and this goes back to the expectation in those first couple of times when you try something new and you say, I'm going to try to put in this front cross and because I want my dog to be faster. And then you go and you, the handler, don't do it very well. And the dog makes a mistake and then they don't get their reward. And then they slow down as a result. So we have to be very careful when we're trying to increase speed that we still keep our rewards up. Because if your dog is used to a certain amount of rewards and now through no fault of their own, they're getting fewer rewards, then that also is going to hurt their drive, their confidence, and ultimately their speed. So, I think we have to be careful about the rewards when we're increasing that speed. You have to reward effort a lot of times, or you have to find something else to reward in the sequence to keep your dog in the game while you, handler, figure out your timing.
And I will add into that I think importance of verbal timing. We talked a lot about positioning and being on the dog's line and outside. I feel like the shift onto verbals now compared to where it was 7 years ago. 7 years ago, it was like, move in the direction you want the dog to go. Let him follow your motion. Let him follow your speed. And I feel like in the last several years, we've seen such a high emphasis on verbals to the point that we see a lot of training of, if I haven't cued it, don't take it, right? Running right up to a tunnel and stopping. And if you haven't cued it, they're not going. Well, that puts a lot of priority on you as a handler to make sure you give the verbals on time. I had a lesson just this week that the handler was late on their cues, and I could visibly see the dog slow down and wait for the verbal. So they'd come out of the tunnel and they're waiting. Mm-hmm. Okay, walk it. Okay, now I can go, and they can run up. So same thing with all of the body cues and the body position and giving information. I'm seeing a more and more dogs lose their speed because of late verbal cues than I saw, say, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty interesting.
I think, from my perspective, I would say that you want, agility is a game where you need speed and accuracy. It just is. And so I think focusing only on speed is a mistake. And I think focusing only on accuracy is a mistake. And I think that the best dogs are the ones who are going to have been brought up where there are a lot of rewards for being right, and there are a lot of rewards and opportunity to be fast. So you have to set them up so that they can do things fast, and you have to build up that speed and then build up the accuracy also. And so I think part of the problem is exactly the mentality of, let me teach my dog all of agility. And then when we get to masters and get our mock, now I want to focus on speed. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that is a lot harder than kind of focusing on a balanced approach from the very beginning with the dog, understanding that you may not get the first mock.
Well, I mean, do we really need a balanced understanding? Maybe we all disagree. Let's take a straw poll here. My opinion is speed is more important than accuracy. That's going to be a reflection of my personal beliefs, the dogs I've run, the competitions I optimize for, certainly. But I'm going to argue that even for the weekend warrior with their largely pet dog, that you're going to want to emphasize speed over accuracy, especially at first, because even though that's not very reinforcing for the handler, right? It's so easy to lose speed and so difficult to teach it later.
Okay, I 100% agree with you.
Right.
Like if you
have accuracy from the start and you train the speed out of them, it is not easy to get that speed back.
I totally agree. But because I don't
think there should be a 50-50.
Well, I don't think it's a 50-50 balance, but I think that there needs to be, I think you can go all the way on the speed where the dog stops like paying attention to the handler. Now to me, that's just bad training. That being said, if my choices are a highly accurate dog who isn't very fast or an extremely fast dog who's not paying attention, I take the extremely fast dog every single time. I can teach that dog to pay attention. I can teach that dog.
We need the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Well, now I feel like you're saying what I said.
I am saying.
Okay, what's the tiebreaker? Jen, what do you think?
I think you all have very accurate points. I would agree with some elements on both sides early on.
So diplomatic.
Early on, I definitely want the speed early on. And yes, that a dog with speed that's not paying attention is probably more dog training. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it really is a personal decision for what a person's goals are. I think, you're talking to what extreme on each end, right? So a dog who's accurate, but not super speedy. How not super speedy? Are they just only getting 4 and 5 mock points? Are they not making course time? And a dog who's fast but not accurate, are they queuing 1 out of 6 or 0 out of 15? So you have a little bit of a balance on each end there. I'm always a little bit better, I think, at the team run than the individual run. That's the way I think about it. I'm much better at the team run. Get run clean, get it done. Than I am the individual run. There is no prize for the fastest in queue. But there's also no prize for running clean if you were over course time. So individual goals, individual teams.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point.
Yeah. All about context.
Yep.
I have one more thing to say.
All right.
And that's it, that Jen, you can tell me if you've had this experience as well. You'll get 2 different kinds of videos from people who want to make their dog faster. So in the first video, someone hands you, and let's say both dogs are just a little bit under course time, 2-3 seconds under course time. They're about the same speed. But in one of those videos, right, the dog is running, the lines are like pretty good, and the handler is definitely good. In fact, this is probably a handler who has other dogs who's competed at a high level, maybe won stuff, right? And they're running this dog and they're 2 or 3 seconds under, and they come to you and they say, "Hey, I need help," and the handling looks very good. They're not doing things like pushing on the dog's line. They cross in the right places, and you've seen them run fast dogs at a very high level. And then you get the other handler whose dog's also 2 or 3 seconds under time, right? But there's lots of wide turns. They're spinning the wrong way on rear crosses. The handling is not well timed. The cross selection is poor. Like, even though you have 2 dogs, 2 to 3 seconds under course time, like, we're talking about vastly different situations, right? And that's what I mean by everything being contextual. And I think that's probably the most important thing about this podcast. We started with something that seems so obvious, that speed and accuracy have this inverse relationship where the more you have one, the weaker the other one is going to be. But that's not absolutely true. I think we've explored a lot of that. Jen, in this situation, like, what are some things that you're going to do or say when you're working with people on these 2 sides?
The first thing that comes to mind in the scenario that you're describing is we're we're really solving these issues with two different things. On one hand, we're solving them with handling for the dog that is turning the wrong way and having wide lines and having wide turns. Mm-hmm. And then we have the other scenario, which is the handling is looking good. The handler, again, maybe more seasoned. So there has to be some weakness in the dog training element, whether it's the reinforcement, whether it's the markers. Right. And in my experience, dog training is significantly harder to teach someone to do and requires a lot of very extreme diligence and consistency than handling. So as an instructor, if somebody said, teach an agility seminar, an agility handling seminar, or teach a dog training seminar, I'm teaching the agility handling seminar because you can often get quicker results, right? Hey, you need to apply lateral pressure sooner. They rerun, they apply lateral pressure sooner, boom, dog switch leads, problem solved. But dog training, that can take weeks, months of, even if the handler is perfect immediately, you still have to train, some of those bad habits out of the dog or rebuild their confidence up or go through an entire protocol of, reinforcements and consistency on reinforcements and variable reinforcements and reinforcements outside the ring, So absolutely. In terms of which one I'd prefer to deal with from an instructing standpoint, the one who we need to clean the handling, because I can teach the handler to change that, modify that, I feel like on a much quicker scale with much quicker results than dog training.
I feel like I feel like we've outed ourselves a little bit, because when you were describing that, I was just thinking about how excited I get as an instructor when somebody sends me a run and they're like, I don't know what I did wrong. And they made like 5 gross errors. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to blow their mind so easily.
Right? And then their dog's going to be amazing.
And
this is why I don't do contact and weave seminars, because contact and weave seminars are never a quick fix. You will never see me be teaching contact and weave seminars. I'm never going to fix your weave poles in 2 hours. I'm not going to fix your contacts in 2 hours. It's always dog training. But I'll teach handling seminars. Yeah. All I want is jumps and tunnels. And in a perfect world, my seminar is jumps and tunnels.
This could lead right into the next topic, because this has such a huge impact on the sport. If you have instructors across the board who are all about teaching the agility, but they're like, hey, this start line issue you're having, I don't want to work on it in class with you, do that away from the field on your own time. Your dog speed, we're not really working on that. Today, we're working on backsides from a distance or front cross footwork or getting your blind cross done early or whatever. Then no one kind of addresses those issues, and they show up with these dogs who always run slow. They start really slow, and then the last 5 obstacles, they speed up. And the amount of work and effort, like just those things that Jennifer was just saying, if you don't understand half the things she said around variable reinforcement, right, reward placement, and just good old fashioned dog training, right, that's probably where a lot of your deficit lies. If you have a dog and you're thinking to yourself right now, I'm listening to this podcast because I want my dog to be faster, right? That's what's happening there. So very, very interesting perspective. Yeah.
All righty. Well, I think we have covered all the points that I wanted to cover today. I guess the last thing that I would just say is that I do believe that you can have both. You can have speed and accuracy. I think about Swift winning all 4 tryout rounds at the world team tryouts, right? And also Swift is a medal, silver medal winning dog at Worlds. So literally the number 2 dog in the world at that height. And also 4 for 4 at tryouts. So it's not impossible to have both. We just want you to, think about your own expectations and how you approach speed and accuracy and kind of what you want out of the sport, so that you're making the right decisions for you and your dog, making the right decisions for you and your puppy as you bring your next dog along, and getting what you want out of your time in the ring. Mm-hmm. And that's it for this week's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsor, hititboard.com. Happy training.